No alien wanted to touch her. But one human ignored the entire galaxy for her. The sky above the desert was a colorless dome, bleached, vast, and merciless. Two suns beat down on the cracked, ivory-colored sand, creating shimmering illusions of life where none existed. The planet was called Virelia, a wasteland on the edge of the civilized galactic ring, avoided by travelers and forgotten by empires. The heat here didn't just scorch the skin. It reached deeper, into memory, into the soul. Alec Vaughn, 31, former soldier, now cargo pilot for a struggling private company, stood beside his grounded ship, a battered Class 7 freighter with hull scars from years of neglect and conflict. He squinted at the horizon, his face streaked with sweat and dust. Something was wrong with the fuel cell regulator. Again, he muttered under his breath and kicked the stabilizer gently, as if physical abuse could persuade it to cooperate. The only thing that answered was the dry wind, howling like a whisper of ghosts. Then he saw her. She stood maybe 20 meters away, framed by the haze of heat and shimmering light. At first, he thought she was a hallucination. Virelia was known for those, phantoms born from dehydration and heat stroke. But no, she was real. She didn't move, just stood, barefoot in the hot sand, her pale white hair falling over her shoulders like silk caught in moonlight. Her skin was an iridescent shade of blue, smooth, unblemished, almost glowing. A thin, silvery garment clung to her figure, tattered and torn from what looked like days, if not weeks, of wandering. Alec instinctively reached for the sidearm on his belt, but something about her posture made him pause. She wasn't a threat. She was exhausted. He stepped forward cautiously, boots crunching the cracked ground beneath him. She didn't react, just turned her face slightly toward him, revealing enormous silver eyes, framed by long white lashes. There was something ancient in them, something raw. "Hey," he said, his voice hoarse. "You all right?" No response. She just stared. "Do you understand me?" he asked. Her lips parted slowly. Her voice, when it came, was barely more than a whisper. "They left me." Her comment was accented but clear. Alec's stomach tightened. "Who?" "All of them." She lowered herself to the ground slowly, as if the strength had finally drained from her limbs. Sand clung to her blue skin. Alec took a few more steps and crouched nearby, keeping a respectful distance. The pilot in him wanted to assess her injuries. The soldier in him knew a trap when he saw one, but neither instinct won. Instead, the human in him did. He reached for his water canister and handed it to her. She took it without hesitation, drinking greedily, then coughing as the cold hit her throat. Alec almost smiled. She looked up at him with cautious gratitude. "I'm Alec," he said. "Alec Vaughn. From Earth." She blinked slowly. "You're human. That's what the rumors say." She didn't laugh, but her lips curved slightly, as if the idea of humor was a concept she recognized but hadn't had reason to use in a long time. He sat beside her, legs crossed, eyes scanning the horizon. The silence between them was filled with a heavy, unspoken tension. Not hostility, something else. Despair. "I'm not supposed to be here," she finally said. "Neither am I. I was promised union. Selection." Her voice trembled slightly. "But none wanted me." Alec frowned. "Union? Like mating?" She nodded once. He'd heard of this. In some alien societies, especially in the inner colonies of the Siren cluster, there were brutal traditions tied to genetic worth. If a potential partner was rejected by a certain number of suitors, they were labeled unchosen, considered defective, cast out, abandoned, sometimes even sterilized. Alec felt a hot flare of anger in his chest. "So they just dumped you here? It is the law. Hell of a law." She looked at him again. "You're the first male who has spoken to me since the exile." He shook his head. "Well, that's their loss." She tilted her head, curious. "Why are you helping me?" "I don't know," Alec admitted. "Maybe because you're alive, and no one deserves to be left like this." She stared at him for a long moment. Then she said quietly, "My name is Saria." "Saria," he repeated. "Beautiful name." They sat in silence a while longer, the wind whipping around them. Far in the distance, sand swirled in lazy spirals, reminding them both how alone they were on this world. Eventually, Saria spoke again. "You shouldn't stay. The desert takes everything." Alex smirked. So do most places I've been. She turned her gaze toward his ship. Does it work? Usually. Right now, it's throwing a tantrum. I could help, she said. He raised an eyebrow. You good with ships? I was a tech binder. Before the rejection. That explained a lot. He stood and offered her a hand. Then let's get it flying. This place sucks. She hesitated before placing her blue hand in his. It was warm, lighter than he expected, delicate but firm. In that touch, something shifted. Maybe it was the beginning of trust, or maybe something deeper. Whatever it was, Virelia's winds didn't seem quite as loud anymore. The interior of the freighter was barely cooler than the desert outside. The ventilation system groaned in protest as Alec and Saria stepped through the hatch. Dust clung to every surface, and the smell of old metal and recycled air wrapped around them like a second skin. Saria paused inside, her silver eyes scanning every panel, every wire, every exposed conduit. This ship is injured, she said softly. Alec chuckled as he wiped sweat from his brow. That's one way to put it. He moved toward the engine compartment, pulling off a panel with a practiced grunt. Saria followed, crouching beside him. She didn't hesitate. Her hands moved swiftly, tracing the wiring with a precision that surprised him. Within seconds, she'd isolated the faulty component and was already adjusting the bypass manually. Alec watched in silence. She was graceful, methodical, like someone trying to rebuild a life one wire at a time. You've done this before, he said. I used to design systems like this, she replied, not looking up. Before I was told I had no value. Alec's jaw tightened. Well, they're idiots. She paused and glanced at him. You don't even know what I'm capable of. I don't need to. You're still standing after being dumped on this rock and surviving alone. That's enough. Saria blinked slowly, processing his words. He didn't know it yet, but no one in her entire life had ever spoken to her like that. She returned her focus to the circuit. Within minutes, the ship's internal lights flickered to life, followed by the soft hum of stabilizers kicking in. There, she said. Functional. For now. Alec grinned. You just gave this bucket a second chance. I wasn't talking about the ship, she said quietly. He froze for a moment. Then, clearing his throat, he stood. We'll lift off at dawn. After that, I can get you somewhere safer. Saria tilted her head. Why would you help me? I told you. You're alive. That matters. No one else believed that. They're not me. She stared at him a long moment, something unspoken swimming behind her eyes. Then she said, You should be careful, Alec Vaughn. I carry more than rejection. I carry danger. He raised an eyebrow. What kind of danger? Before she could answer, the ship's proximity alert wailed. Both of them turned. Alec moved to the control panel, slapped a few buttons, and pulled up the exterior cameras. Something was moving in the desert. Multiple somethings. Tall, slender, bipedal. Shimmering cloaks of heat-bending camouflage flickered across their forms. Saria inhaled sharply. They followed me. Ooh, the selectors. Guardians of the Gene Directive. They don't tolerate failed unions. I wasn't meant to survive. Alec's heart pounded. You're saying they're here to finish what your people started. She nodded once. They will destroy the ship. And you. He swore under his breath, grabbing his sidearm from the storage locker. Not happening. Saria stepped in front of him. You can't fight them. Their armor bends light, their bodies shift shape, and they don't bleed like you do. I've taken down worse. No, she said. You haven't. Alec looked at her, really looked at her. She wasn't just scared. She was bracing herself for annihilation. She'd already accepted it. But he hadn't. I'm not leaving you out there to die, Saria. I am not your responsibility. No, you're not. He paused. But maybe you're my reason. She stared at him, something fragile flickering in her expression. She didn't understand why he'd fight for her. Not really. Not yet. But a part of her wanted to believe it. Alec moved fast, sealing the outer doors and powering down all non-essential systems. If we can mask the ship's heat signature, maybe they'll pass us over. Saria shook her head. They don't scan. They smell intention. They hunt by emotion. And right now, you reek of defiance. Alec smirked. I've been told that before. The ship trembled. Not from movement, from proximity. The selectors were close. Alec turned to Saria. What happens if they find us? She looked down. They'll execute me. then erase your memory. If they can't, they'll erase you. Wonderful. He sat down beside her, thinking hard. We need a way to neutralize them, or distract them long enough to escape. I could go outside, she said. Draw them away. No. You might survive. I won't. I said no. He looked at her again. This woman, this being, rejected, discarded, hunted, and yet she was willing to sacrifice herself for him after just a few hours. That did something to him. It rearranged his idea of courage, of worth. He stood. We have one advantage. They don't expect resistance. She frowned. What do you mean? I mean, I've got a mining drone in the cargo hold. It's got a fusion cutter and a bad temper. Maybe if we mount on the ridge, give them something to chase. Surya blinked. You would fight machines of light with a broken drone? He smiled. Welcome to Earth-style improvisation. For the first time, she laughed. It was soft, brief, but real. Alec grinned. That's better. Outside, the wind picked up, blowing sand against the hull in waves. Somewhere out in the dust, the selectors waited, impatient, precise, and inhuman. Inside the freighter, two outcasts, one human, one alien, began preparing to do something their enemies never expected. Fight back. The desert night fell fast. On Virilia, dusk didn't bleed across the sky like on Earth. It snapped into place, sunlight vanished, and with it, warmth. In its absence, the wind turned vicious, howling across the sand like something hungry. Inside the freighter, Alec bolted the last of the access hatches shut. The ship was now sealed, silent, and dark, just the soft glow of the emergency console casting light across his face. Surya crouched beside a crate in the rear bay, her hands moving across a panel she had disassembled from the mining drone. Loose wires sparked slightly, then stabilized. Her white hair shimmered like snow against the rust-colored walls. They're circling, she said without looking up. How many? 4, maybe 5. I can feel them now. Their signals are faint, but they echo through everything. You said they hunt emotion, Alec replied, grabbing his rifle. What do they do when they find it? They reflect it back, she said. Worse than before. He didn't understand that fully, but he'd seen enough war to know when a fight was coming. Surya finally stood and handed him a palm-sized device. Signal disruptor. It won't stop them, but it'll blind their internal comms for 30 seconds. Alec pocketed it. 30 seconds might be enough. He moved toward the front ramp, preparing to activate the drone and draw them off. But Surya stopped him. There's something I haven't told you, she said, her voice low. Alec turned, cautious. Now's the time. I wasn't just rejected. I was marked. Marked how? They implanted a genetic signal in me. A beacon. Anyone who shelters me becomes a target. Permanently. Alec's breath caught. You mean, even if we escape, they'll keep coming, wherever you go, until you're erased. He stared at her, throat tight. You should have told me. I was going to die anyway, she whispered. You weren't supposed to care. For a long moment, neither spoke. The silence pressed in from every side, thick, heavy, brutal. Then Alec exhaled. Too late now. I already do. Surya looked up sharply, her eyes wide. Why? Alec gave a half-smile. Because you're the only person I've met out here who doesn't see me as disposable. You risk your life for a stranger. You're not a stranger anymore. He slung the rifle over his shoulder. We make it through this. We'll figure the rest out. Surya hesitated, then nodded. Together, they moved out. The ridge was a jagged cut of black rock, rising from the sand like a broken tooth. The mining drone had been repositioned, half buried, its emitter core pulsing faintly as it waited for the trigger signal. Alec crouched behind a rise, watching the figures below. The selectors were closer now. He could see the outlines of their forms, fluid, semi-humanoid, cloaked in distortion fields that made them shimmer like reflections in broken glass. They didn't walk. They glided, noiseless and methodical. Here we go, Alec muttered. He pressed the ignition button. The drone lit up with a sharp electronic shriek, its fusion cutter flashing in the dark. A high-pitched whir split the air as it spun in a jagged arc toward the enemy. The selectors reacted immediately. Two peeled off, moving in unnatural, angular sprints toward the drone. It blasted sand into the air, hurling plasma across the ridge. The others held formation, still tracking the emotional signature that led them here. Saria leaned in. It won't hold them long. I know, Alex said, checking his rifle one last time. But maybe long enough for you to get away. I'm not leaving you. That's not how this works. Saria grabbed his arm. No, you don't get to make that call. Alec turned to her, and that's when the air rippled behind them. One of the selectors had circled. Too fast. Before Alec could raise his weapon, it struck, its arm lashing out like liquid steel. He was hurled backward into the rock, his breath exploding from his lungs. Saria screamed. The selector advanced, tendrils of energy trailing from its limbs. It ignored her. She was the target, but not the threat. That was Alec. Bleeding from a gash above his brow, Alec staggered to his feet and triggered the disruptor in his hand. The selector froze mid-strike. Just for a second, Saria moved. With speed Alec hadn't seen before, she leapt onto the creature's back, her fingers driving into the back of its skull plate. She whispered something, alien, sharp, and a wave of blue light exploded from her hands. The selector convulsed and collapsed in the sand. Dead. We're disabled. Alex stared in shock. What the hell was that? I wasn't just bred for union. Saria panted, trembling. I was bred for control. I was supposed to bind my mate's genetic legacy. They feared me because I was too strong. Alec wiped blood from his eye. You're full of surprises. I'm full of failures, she said bitterly. Not from where I'm standing. Suddenly, the drone's signal went dead. 2 more selectors turned toward the ridge. No more time, Alec growled. Run. But Saria grabbed his hand. No, she said. If I connect with one of them, permanently, I might overwrite the beacon, sever the signal. That sounds like suicide. It might be, she admitted. But so is running. She looked at him. Really looked. If I do this, will you remember me? Alec pulled her close. I won't forget you even if they kill me. Their foreheads touched, skin to skin, warmth against warmth. The moment was brief. Charged. Final. Then Saria turned, hands glowing with pale blue light, and stepped into the dark, straight toward the approaching monsters. Alec watched her walk away and knew. Nothing was going to be the same after this. The ground beneath Alec's feet vibrated as Saria walked into the open desert. The selectors didn't hesitate. Their bodies shifted into new forms. Less humanoid, more serpentine. Limbs retracted. Faces vanished. What remained were beings of raw, biological calculation. Hunters. Judges. Saria slowed her pace. Her white hair whipped in a rising wind, and her blue skin shimmered like liquid light under the twin moons. She raised her hands. I'm no longer bound, she shouted, her voice echoing unnaturally. I claim release by force of will. Come and test me. The selectors stopped. It was the first time Alec had ever seen them hesitate. Then, 2 lunged. Saria didn't run. She closed her eyes, and the ground beneath her feet lit up. Not fire. Not tech. Something older. A symbol flared in the sand. Circular. Etched in invisible lines that now sparked to life with glowing energy. It pulsed with every heartbeat. Her heartbeat. Alec gasped. What is that? An AI voice in his ship's headset. Still linked. Activated. Reacting to the energy spike. Unknown biological signature detected. Subtype, echokin. Probability of neural override event. 88%. Neural override? Alec didn't like the sound of that. The selectors struck, but they didn't reach her. A wave of force exploded outward from the glowing circle, hitting them midair. Their bodies twisted, glitching in real time, forced to ground like puppets with their strings cut. They screamed, not with mouths, but through vibrations, pulses in the air that felt like shards of glass against bone. Saria's eyes opened, and they were pure silver. She stepped forward, placed her palm on one of the selectors' torsos, and whispered something in her language. The creature convulsed, then collapsed completely. The beacon that had pulsed in her chest dimmed. 1 broken. 3 remained, but Saria was fading. Her knees buckled. Blood, blue and luminous, began to trickle from her nose. She fell to one hand, panting, shaking. The cost was too high. Saria, Alec shouted, breaking from cover. He ran across the sand, ignoring the others as they advanced again. He reached her, sliding down beside her body, pulling her into his arms. Her breathing was shallow. Her fingers twitched against his chest. I can't. Sever all of them, she whispered. Too many. Too fast. Alex's heart raced. Then we run. Screw the rest. We survive. She shook her head weakly. They'll track us. Forever. I don't care. Alec, I'm not human. I'm not built for love. My biology was engineered for function. But something's wrong with me. He stared at her, eyes locked. Nothing's wrong with you. She coughed, a flicker of a smile on her cracked lips. Then why do I want to stay? A tremor rolled beneath them. The remaining selectors closed in, glowing blades extending from their arms. Their energy levels surged, fury evident in every silent movement. They weren't going to spare her. Or Alec. He reached for his rifle. Only 2 shots left. Then we make this count, he muttered. Surya looked at him, dazed but clear. If we don't survive, we will. Then remember me. Not as a failure. You're not. He kissed her forehead, then stood, placing himself between her and the approaching executioners. He raised the rifle. Fired once, direct hit. The first selector dropped, writhing, disoriented by the disruptor shell. The second lunged. Click. Empty. Alec dropped the rifle and braced for impact when Surya rose behind him. Not fully, but enough. Her body glowed from within, spine to fingertips, her veins pulsing with impossible energy. She cried out, a sound that shattered the air, and unleashed a shockwave that stopped time for one impossible second. The final selector shattered in midair. Bits of its armor dissolved into dust. Then all was still. Silence. Alec turned slowly. Surya collapsed into his arms, unconscious, but breathing. He held her tight, chest heaving. The desert wind howled around them, but it no longer felt hostile. It felt like the breath of something watching, approving. They had survived. For now. The next morning, inside the freighter, Alec watched over Surya's sleeping form. She looked peaceful. He sat beside her with a med kit, cleaning the blue blood from her temple, hands shaking slightly. His body ached, but his heart ached more. She had risked everything, not just for survival, for him. And now, everything had changed. She wasn't just an exile. She wasn't just a weapon. She was someone worth fighting for, and worth protecting. Always. He looked at the camera drone in the corner of the room, still recording as part of the freighter's black box log. He leaned forward and spoke quietly. If you're watching this, you probably think it's crazy that a human gave up his life for someone the galaxy called worthless. But if you've ever rooted for a love the universe said was impossible, then you understand. He looked down at Surya again and smiled. If you've ever rooted for a love the universe said was impossible, subscribe. This story isn't over. 2 days passed. The suns over Varelia had burned hot and faded cold twice since the night of the battle. And though the silence outside the freighter was undisturbed, Alec knew it wasn't peace. It was aftermath. Surya was still unconscious for most of that time, her body flickering with faint pulses of bioluminescence as her cells tried to repair what had been pushed beyond their limit. Alec kept vigil. He rationed water, fixed the hull breach from the selector blast, and recalibrated the comm array. But he didn't try to send a distress signal. Not yet. He didn't want to bring more of the galaxy to her. She needed space. And so did he. The freighter's interior was dim, quiet, and smelled of coolant and dry blood. Alec sat beside Surya, his rifle across his lap, boots on the cold metal floor, listening to the sound of her breathing. When her eyes finally opened, they didn't glow. They shimmered like real eyes. Exhausted. Alive. You stayed, she said weakly. Of course I did. I thought you'd leave. Then you still don't know me. She tried to sit up. Groaned. Easy, he said. You push your body past the point of return. You're lucky you're not dead. I was ready to be. Well, don't be. He helped her up gently and offered a flask of water. She sipped slowly, hands trembling. I feel hollow, she murmured. Your energy readings were all over the place. I think you burned through more than just physical strength. Neural strain, maybe. Surya looked down at her fingers. I can't feel my signal anymore. Alec's breath caught. You mean the beacon? She nodded. It's gone. He leaned back, stunned. You did it. You broke the chain. At a cost, she said. I'm not what I was. I don't know what I am now. Alec stood and walked to the console. He activated the holomap. The screen blinked. Red symbols filled the chart. He turned to her. We've got a problem. Saria slowly stood, her legs shaking but functional. She moved beside him and looked at the data. 3 scout ships were inbound. No beacons, no transmissions. But their energy signatures were pure Siren military. "They're looking for you," Alex said. "Or for what I did. Either way, we've got hours. Maybe less." She closed her eyes. "I should have died that night. I broke a genetic law. They'll come to erase the evidence." "Too late," Alex said. "I'm the evidence now." Saria turned to him. "Then you need to go. Take the ship. Leave me here." "No. They won't stop unless I—" "No," he said again, firmer. "This isn't your burden alone anymore." She stared at him. He stepped closer. "I didn't stay with you to run away now." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Then we'll both die. Maybe. But if I have to die for something, this is it." They stood there, surrounded by silence and static and flickering lights. 2 broken people who had somehow become each other's reason to fight. Saria reached forward and placed her hand on his chest. "I was engineered for obedience," she said. "For function. For compliance. But something inside me changed." Alec took her hand in his. "Yeah, you started living." She smiled softly. He leaned down and kissed her, slowly, gently, without urgency. It wasn't desperate. It was real. It was the kind of kiss that said this is worth it, no matter how short-lived it might be. Later, while Saria rested, Alec worked in the cargo bay. He tore open the sensor array and began rerouting power from the engine core. Not to run, not to escape, to broadcast. He was done hiding. The galaxy needed to hear what had happened. He activated the freighter's long-range comms and pressed record. His face appeared in the flickering hollow. "This is Captain Alec Vaughn, Earthborn, independent contractor. I'm broadcasting for Virelia. 3 days ago, I found a woman in the desert. She wasn't a threat. She was exiled, rejected, and marked for death by her own kind. But she fought back, and she survived. If you're hearing this, know that everything you've been told about the Siren Unions is a lie. She is proof. And if they come for her again, they'll find me standing in the way." He ended the transmission and uploaded it on an encrypted loop, bouncing it across a dozen relay satellites. The message would spread, and maybe, just maybe, others would listen, or rebel. Back in the crew quarters, Saria opened her eyes again. Her strength was returning slowly. She felt something unfamiliar in her chest. Not pain, not terror. Hope. For the first time, the future was a space not yet written. She turned her head and saw Alex sitting beside her, watching the stars through the viewport. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. They were already past the point of needing words. But still, quietly, Saria reached for his hand, and he held it tight. Virelia's dawn was quiet. No explosions, no hunters, no weapons drawn. Just wind brushing through the sand and the sound of systems humming steadily aboard the freighter. For the first time in days, Alec felt like he could breathe without checking over his shoulder. Saria sat at the helm, legs crossed beneath her, the pale blue of her skin tinted gold by the twin suns outside. Her hair, though still tangled and unwashed, shimmered again like snow touched by morning light. She stared through the viewport, watching the desert glow. Her posture was relaxed, but her eyes held something new. Resolve. Alec leaned in the doorway, arms crossed, watching her. "You ever seen a sunrise before?" he asked. She nodded. "Just never lived to enjoy one." He stepped forward. "Well, get used to it." She turned to him, lips curving softly. "You sound like someone with a plan. I've got the star of one. We jump out of here on auxiliary power and head for the verdant expanse. That sector's neutral. Harder to trace us there." Saria raised an eyebrow. "You think neutrality protects us now?" "I think anything's better than staying here and waiting to be hunted again." She looked back at the suns. "Do you think they'll keep coming?" "They might," Alec admitted. "But next time we'll be ready." Saria stood slowly and walked toward him. Her movements were more fluid now. No longer shaking, no longer weighed down by fear. She stopped just inches away from him. "I never had a choice before," she said. "Everything in my life, who I was supposed to be with, how I was supposed to act, it was all programmed into me. I thought that was normal." Alec tilted his head. "And now, I think, maybe freedom feels terrifying because it's real." He smiled. "Yeah, it is." She placed her hand on his chest, over his heart. When I fought those selectors, something inside me broke. Or maybe awakened. I wasn't following a directive. I was protecting someone. You. He covered her hand with his. You saved me. You saved both of us. They stood there for a long moment in silence, a new kind of understanding blooming between them. Not just attraction, not just survival, bonding, not chemical, not mechanical, human, real. Surya stepped back. There's something else. Something I haven't told you. Alec braced himself. You're not secretly married, are you? She actually laughed. The sound filled the ship like warmth. No, she said. I wasn't just engineered for mating. My DNA carries something called thread memory. What's that? Encoded knowledge. It's passed on through certain types of emotional trauma. When I broke from the system, I triggered it. Alec narrowed his eyes. Triggered it how? I saw things. Blueprints. Secrets. Fail-safes the Siren try to bury. There are others like me. Hidden. Sleeping. Discarded. His blood ran cold. You're saying they created more like you, and threw them away when they didn't meet the standard? She nodded. I think I know where one of them is. Alex sat slowly in the pilot's chair. That changes everything. Surya looked at him, uncertain. I don't want to pull you deeper into this. Too late. We're already in it together. You're not afraid? I'm terrified, he admitted. But fear never stopped me before. She smiled, softer this time. Then let's go wake the others. Before departure, they walked once more onto the sands of Aurelia. The wind had calmed. The sky above them was clear. Surya turned in a slow circle, taking in the desolate planet that had nearly been her grave, and was now, strangely, the birthplace of her future. I don't want to forget this place, she said. You won't, Alec replied. Places like this stay with you. They leave marks you can't wash off. She looked at him. Do I mark you? He didn't hesitate. More than anyone ever has. She stepped closer. Then promise me something. Anything. No matter what happens next, no matter where we go, or who we have to fight. Don't let me go back to being what they made me. Alec touched her face gently. You're not theirs anymore. You're yours. And I'm not letting anyone take that away. A long silence stretched between them. Then, without a word, she leaned into him, forehead to forehead, and they stood like that, wrapped in silence, feeling the heat of the suns and the cool of each other's breath. It wasn't passion. It wasn't lust. It was something heavier, devotion, and then it was time to leave. Back aboard the freighter, Alec activated the core. The ship rumbled, engines groaning back to life. Surya dropped into the co-pilot seat beside him and reached for the NAV console. Verdant expanse. For now. Then after that, we go where the next clue takes us. The freighter lifted from the cracked sands, rising through the dry air like a ghost breaking free from the grave. Below, the desert faded into light and distance. As the ship broke the atmosphere, Surya looked back. I was supposed to die here, she whispered. But you didn't, Alex said. You lived, and now you fight. For them. For you, he said, and for whatever we're becoming. The freighter cleared orbit. The stars opened around them, and two souls once abandoned by everything they knew began building something no one expected. A life. Together. 3 jumps later, they arrived at the edge of a dying star. The verdant expanse was not the safe haven Alec hoped for. It was a graveyard. Debris from old battles drifted in slow spirals. Ships cracked open, colonies erased by silence. This sector wasn't neutral. It was forgotten. And in the center of it, floating above the glowing corpse of a collapsed moon, was the signal Surya had seen in her thread memory. A deep core station, half buried in asteroid fragments, still faintly pulsing with power. This is it, she said, staring at the scans. Alec nodded. No defenses. No beacons. Just quiet. Too quiet. Still, they went in. They docked at the base of the old station and entered through a fractured airlock. The halls were filled with dust and echoes. Machines still hummed behind the walls, but there were no footsteps, no voices, just a distant rhythm, like a heart still beating beneath the ruins. Surya led. She didn't hesitate. It was like she'd walked these halls before, even though she never had. The thread memory guided her, down rusted corridors and forgotten chambers, until they reached a sealed door. Behind it, a cryo chamber. One survivor, a girl, no more than 10 in human years. Skin blue, hair white, just like her. But this one was sleeping. Surya placed her hand on the glass. She's like me. Alec checked the readout. Vitals are stable. Looks like she's been under for decades. Surya's voice trembled. They froze her because she was too strong. She's not a weapon, Alec said. She's a child. But as he reached for the release switch, the station shook. Hard. Surya's eyes went wide. No. No, no, no. They followed us. Alec rushed to the console. Multiple energy signatures were closing in fast. One large, two smaller. Siren ships. Elite class. 3 vessels. We've got minutes. We're out of time, Surya said. We have to wake her. We don't even know if she'll survive the thaw. We don't have a choice. Alec hit the override. The cryo chamber hissed, steam billowing into the room. The child's fingers twitched. Her eyelids fluttered. Outside, the walls trembled again. Then the station's AI kicked in. Warning, security lockdown activated. Unknown DNA match detected. Protocol, Exion triggered. What the hell is that? Alec asked. Surya's voice dropped to a whisper. They didn't just hide her, they protected her. Metal shutters slammed down across corridors. The lights dimmed, and then came the voice, louder than before, deeper than any AI Alec had heard. Siren error specimens located. Initiating final purge sequence. Surya backed away from the cryo chamber. That's not Siren military. That's Siren God tech. That's old. How old? Pre-Federation. Forbidden level. Another tremor hit. This time, something cracked above them. A slow creak echoed through the ceiling. And then the defense system activated. Drones. Hundreds of them. Crawling from the walls like insects. Eyes glowing red. Guns warming up. Alec raised his rifle. We're not dying here. Surya grabbed the child from the chamber. Barely awake, breathing shallow. We run. Back to the freighter. They ran. Through collapsing corridors. Under falling beams. Alec fired wildly at the drones, but they kept coming. Relentless, precise, mechanical justice. As they reached the last hallway before the hangar, a plasma bolt struck Alec in the side. He dropped hard, gasping, blood pouring through his shirt. Surya screamed, dropping to his side. No, 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 no. Keep going. Alec coughed. I'm not leaving you. He grabbed her wrist. Protect the girl. I can't do this alone. You're not alone. You're enough. Tears filled her eyes. She kissed him hard, then lifted the child into her arms and ran, sprinting through the last set of blast doors as they began to close. Behind her, the hallway collapsed. Alec was gone, or so she thought. Back on the freighter, Surya placed the girl into a med cradle. She turned, trembling, ready to go back into the fire. When the external doors clanged open, a silhouette stood in the light. Alec, bleeding, burned, but alive. He'd used an old bulkhead to shield himself in the collapse and dragged his body through the wreckage to escape. Surya didn't cry. She just grabbed him and didn't let go. You idiot, she whispered into his shoulder. You should have stayed down. He laughed, barely. Would have missed the part where you saved the universe. Later, in the med bay, Alec lay on the table, patched up but weak. The girl slept quietly in the pod beside him. Surya sat close, holding his hand. You almost died, she said. I might still. No, she said. You don't get to leave me. Not after all this. He smiled faintly. You know what's wild? What? I used to think I was broken. A failed soldier. A waste of space. You're not. He squeezed her hand. Neither are you. She looked down at the girl. What do we do now? We keep moving. We protect her. We find the others. And if they come again? He looked at her, eyes sharp. Then we stop running. The stars look different now. From the bridge of the freighter, the galaxy stretched out like a silent ocean, endless, scattered with light and possibility. And for the first time in weeks, there were no warning signals flashing on the console. No threats. No pursuit. Just stillness. Alec sat at the helm, one hand resting gently over his healing ribs. His side still burned from the plasma wound, and his left shoulder was stiff from the debris impact. But he was alive. That was something. Surya entered the bridge quietly, carrying 2 steaming mugs. She handed one to him and sat in the co-pilot's chair. Still tastes like rust, he said, sipping. Better than sand. They exchanged tired smiles. The girl, the one they found in the cryo chamber, was stable. sleeping peacefully in the med bay, her vitals improving by the hour. Saria had named her Kalen, an old word from her ancestral dialect meaning spark in the dark. She's strong, Alex said. Just like you. Saria looked down at the stars. She shouldn't have been locked away like that. Neither should you. She didn't answer. Not right away. Instead, she turned to him, searching his face. You could have left, Alec. Back on Virelia. Back on the station. Even now. I could have. But you didn't. No, he said. I didn't. A silence settled between them again, but not an uncomfortable one. It was full of everything they didn't need to explain anymore. She reached out, gently placing her fingers on his. There's something I've been meaning to say. He raised an eyebrow. Better be good. I don't know what this is, she said. Between us. What to call it. What it means in human terms. Alec tilted his head. Try me. She leaned in slightly, her silver blue eyes shimmering under the console lights. But when I was designed, I wasn't supposed to feel loss. Or joy. Or this. This. She nodded. This thing in my chest that hurts when you hurt. That settles when I hear your voice. That makes me scared not of dying, but of not seeing you again. He blinked, swallowed hard, then said simply, Same. She smiled. Same. I don't have words either. I just know I'd go through all of it again for you. She didn't kiss him. Not this time. She just laid her head against his shoulder. And it was enough. Later that cycle, Alec worked alone in the rear hold, repairing one of the drone arms. The quiet let his mind drift. Everything had changed. He was no longer a solo pilot running half-dead cargo routes. No longer aimless. No longer numb. He had a purpose now. A crew. A cause. And someone who, against all odds, chose him. Saria stepped in, leaning on the doorframe. Her posture was relaxed, but there was something determined in her eyes. I've been thinking, she said. That's always dangerous. She smiled. We can't keep running from system to system, hoping we won't be found. No argument here. So what if we did the opposite? Alec looked up. The opposite. We tell our story. We show the galaxy what they try to hide. Alec paused, then slowly stood. You mean broadcast the whole thing? Yes. Every memory thread. Every log. Every visual. Me. You. Kalen. The truth. He rubbed his jaw. You realize that'd make us targets for more than just the Siren, right? The Federation might come down on us too. I don't care, she said. I spent my whole life trying to be invisible, trying not to upset the balance. And they still tried to erase me. He nodded. So we give them something they can't erase. Her voice softened. Hope. Alec took her hand. I'm with you. They sealed it not with a kiss this time, but a handshake. A pact. A promise. One born not of romance, but of shared purpose. Hours later, the freighter's transmitter came online. Saria stood in front of the holocom, calm and centered. Behind her, Alec held Kalen, asleep in his arms. The message began to record. My name is Saria, descendant of a broken genetic line, once considered unworthy by Siren law. I was exiled, hunted, marked for deletion, but I survived, not because of fate, because of a human, Alec Vaughn, who didn't see me as defective, who fought beside me, and because of a child, Kalen, whose light still burns. They're more like us. We will not hide anymore. She looked straight into the lens, eyes unflinching. You can try to silence us, but we are not alone, and we are not afraid. The recording ended. Alec reached forward and pressed send. The signal burst into space, and nothing would ever be the same. The transmission spread faster than they expected. Within days, the outer colonies picked it up, then the pirate relays, then the reformist factions, and then, quietly, anonymously, from the shadows, others responded. Messages from beings with pale skin and glowing veins. From hybrids. From outcasts. From survivors. We thought we were alone. I was told I had no value. I'm watching. I'm ready. Some responses were brief. Others encrypted. A few frantic. But one truth echoed through them all. Hope was contagious. Inside the freighter, silence reigned. But it was the kind of silence that followed transformation, not fear. A calm after the storm. Alex stood at the viewport, watching the stars roll by in streaks of color. The freighter was in mid-jump, headed toward a secret system known only by coordinates passed through one of the encrypted messages. A sanctuary. Maybe. Behind him, Saria entered, holding a data tablet close to her chest. They're organizing, she said softly. Some want to fight. Others want to build. Alec turned. What do you want? She thought for a moment before answering. I want them to stop hiding to survive and start living to be seen. Alec nodded. Then that's what we do. She stepped closer. I used to think I was broken because no one wanted me. Because I was different. Because I couldn't be controlled. You're not broken, Alec said. You're awake. Her expression softened. He reached for her hand. We all were waiting for someone to tell us who we are, he continued. And now we're figuring it out on our own. They stood quietly, hands intertwined, watching the void together. Not as enemies of the galaxy, not as fugitives, but as something new. A family. In the medbay, Kaylin stirred in her sleep. Her vitals pulsed steady, her mind sinking slowly with the world she'd never been awake in. Saria watched her through the glass and spoke quietly. I don't know what kind of mother I'm supposed to be. Alex stood beside her. You don't have to be perfect, just present. Saria blinked slowly. Do you think that's enough? I think, Alex said, it's more than either of us ever had. They both looked at the child. This symbol of lost potential reclaimed, of stolen futures made new. We can't undo what was done to us, Saria whispered. But we can make sure she grows up knowing she's not a mistake. Alec nodded. We start there. Later that cycle, Alec recorded a private log. He didn't plan to send it. Maybe it was for Kaylin. Maybe for himself. This galaxy is built on stories, he said, voice low. Stories about who matters. Who gets saved. Who gets remembered. Most of us were never part of those stories. We were the side notes. The erased files. The unsuitable for union. But now we're writing our own. He paused, looked at the console, and smiled faintly. Love didn't save us. We chose each other. And that changed everything. He ended the log, saved it, and walked away. In the quiet of the freighter, Saria sat with Kaylin's hand in hers, humming an old song. Not one from her programming, but one Alec had sung absent-mindedly weeks ago while fixing a bulkhead. Something small, human, beautiful. She didn't understand all the words, but the feeling behind them. That, she knew now, because she finally understood something no algorithm, no directive, no engineered courtship could replicate. She was loved, not because she was chosen, but because someone saw her and stayed. And in that presence, she found her purpose. Not to be useful, not to be perfect, but to be real. 3 years later, the planet was called Rin 5, but most is called a hollow sky. Once a mining colony, now a sanctuary, rebuilt from ruins by people the galaxy had discarded. People like Alec, Saria, and the little girl who now ran barefoot through the grass under pale lavender skies. Kaylin, stay where I can see you. Saria called out from the steps of their small home carved into the red stone cliffs. Kaylin laughed, loud, free, alive. She was taller now. Her skin still shimmered faint blue, her hair white as ever, but her laugh, that was entirely hers, untouched by programming, unbroken by design. Saria watched her and smiled softly, not because everything was perfect, but because for the first time in her life, it didn't have to be. Behind her, the door opened and Alex stepped out, wearing a well-worn jacket and a new scar along his collarbone. His arm was wrapped in a compression brace from a recent skirmish, but his eyes were sharp, grounded. He stood beside her and handed her a steaming cup of synth leaf tea. You're up early, he said. Couldn't sleep, she replied. Too much peace. He smirked. Good problem to have. They looked out the makeshift village below. Dozens of people, many of them altered or enhanced or rejected by their societies, now working together. Raising crops, building homes, watching suns rise and fall without fear. The Beacon Network, the encrypted comms web they launched after escaping Virelia, had evolved. There were now 14 known hubs across 5 sectors. Hollow Sky was the first to be built openly. Saria took a slow breath. I still wake up expecting to be hunted. Same, Alec admitted. But that feeling, it's just the past testing you. And what if the past comes back? He glanced at Kaylin, who was now kneeling in the grass, examining a silver insect with complete wonder. Then we fight it, he said, like we always do. That afternoon, Saria walked alone to the cliff's edge, where a transmitter dish pointed towards stars. She activated the console and began recording. 3 years ago, I was rejected. Not for crimes, not for violence, but for being unfit to breed. I was cast out, forgotten, left to die. But one human man didn't look at my programming or my rank. He saw me. Today, we've built something better than survival. We've built community, not by conquering, not by fear, but by choosing each other. If you hear this and you feel alone, know that you're not. You are not broken. You're not too much or not enough. You are not disposable. You are the future. And it's time the future looked like all of us. She ended the transmission. Alec met her halfway back to the house, a tired grin on his face. Broadcast it again. Someone out there still needs to hear it. They walked together down the path. Not fast, not running, just together. That night, stars filled the sky. Kaylin slept curled up in a hammock, one hand gripping a worn plush creature Alec had stitched from ship insulation years ago. Saria leaned into him on the porch as they listened to the wind. You ever wonder what would have happened if you'd never landed on Berelia? She asked. Alec thought about it, then shook his head. I'd probably still be out there, lost, waiting for something to give me a reason. And now? He looked at her. Now I don't need a reason. I have a life. She reached for his hand, held it tight. Neither of them was chosen, but both of them chose. And the universe? It would never be the same again. If this story meant something to you, if you've ever felt like an outsider waiting to be seen, leave a comment, share it, subscribe. We have so many more stories to tell, and they all begin with someone brave enough to care.